chair of the COA committee of the Raleigh Historic Development Commission. And today is the Thursday, March 25, 2021 meeting of the COA committee, the place where the rubber meets the road in historic preservation. Let's see, Verche is on, I think, but doesn't have her camera turned on, and I don't see Harold yet. I'll ask the staff to call the roll, and then we'll do introductions, and perhaps we'll have everybody we need by then. I guess we have a quorum, but let's see. So I will, but anyway, for the staff, I'll call the roll. And as I said, I'm Nick Pounson. I'm the chair, and I live in a mid-century modern house, and I'm a lawyer by training and profession. So Janine McAuliffe, if you'll introduce yourself.
Sure, Janine McAuliffe. I'm a residential designer here in Raleigh, and my background is in architecture, and this is my second term on the commission.
Okay, thank you for that. John Reese.
Hi, I'm John Reese. I'm a registered architect. I live in the Glenwood, Brooklyn historic neighborhood, and this is my first year on the commission.
Okay, thank you for that. Verche Height.
Hi, I'm Verche Height. I live in Raleigh as well, and I'm an architect in North Carolina, and this is my first year on the commission also.
Okay, thank you for that. And the other face you folks may see on the screen is Raz Raspberry, our esteemed counsel, and the guy is going to keep us from making any mistakes here. So with that, there are a few things I need to say before we get going on our meetings. We're doing this meeting and these hearings remotely based on provisions of Session Law 2020-3 passed by the North Carolina General Assembly, allowing for quasi-judicial hearings during the current declaration of emergency, i.e. the pandemic. Everyone on the agenda today was notified in advance that we would be using this remote platform, and everyone has agreed to the use of the platform in that way. Notice was provided to the applicants in many ways with signs on the properties and with publication in the newspaper and on the city's website. And in that process, the public had notice of how these meetings would be carried out. Next, anybody who wanted to participate in today's hearings was required to sign up prior to the meeting, and information on how to sign up was provided included in notice letters that were provided to every property owner within 100 feet of any of the subject properties. And so they were also anyone participating was required to turn in their presentation or materials in advance before the meeting. All those materials were placed on the city's website called Board Docs, and so that all of us could see it and all of you could see those documents as well. Finally, everybody who signed up to participate was provided a witness oath and was to return that document to the city, and we will nevertheless administer the oath remotely as allowed by statute, as well as we go to each proceeding. So with that, I will note that there are two summary proceedings on the agenda today, and those being 1028 West South Street, which is COA 8-2021, and 105 South Bloodworth Street, which is COA 24-2021. And at this time, I would inquire if any member of the commission or anyone else wishes to have either of those matters heard as a evidentiary hearing rather than handled as a summary proceeding. Hearing none, we will then entertain a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting, and Janine McAuliffe moves to approve the agenda. John Reese seconds the motion. Any discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand. I see ayes from Versailles Height, John Reese, Janine McAuliffe, and from me. And so the agenda is approved. Likewise, minutes of the February 25, 21 meeting were circulated, and I'll entertain a motion from Janine McAuliffe to approve the minutes of the February meeting. John Reese seconds that motion. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by raising your right hand. Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. And we will now move to the summary proceedings. And with respect to the first one at 1028 West South Street, I would entertain a motion that the comments of staff be accepted as the findings of the committee, and that the action proposed by staff be the action of the committee. And Janine McAuliffe makes that motion. John Reese seconds motion. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your right hand. That motion carries unanimously. We now move to the next summary proceeding, which is 105 South Bloodworth Street. And likewise, I'll ask if there is a motion that the comments of staff be accepted as their findings of fact, along with the application documents, and that the proposed actions proposed by staff be accepted as the actions of the committee. Janine McAuliffe makes that motion. John Reed seconds the motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Raise your right hand. Again, the motion carries unanimously, and we have therefore missed the opportunity to hear from Laurie Jackson. But we will move to the next item, and the next item and the first evidentiary matter to be heard today is 1301 Fillmore Street. That is the Grandchamp matter, which is COA-0114-2020. At this time, I'd ask if Mrs. Grandchamp, Ms. Furr, and Ms. Higashi, if I said that correctly, if you and each of you will, I'll come back to you, Versailles. We'll get the oaths administered. Go ahead.
Sorry, just one thing. Harold just sent me a message. He's trying to get into the meeting, but he can only get in as an attendee. So I don't know who to tell that to, but.
All right, Mr. Belk will be listening, and he will convert Harold to a panelist.
Okay.
And that'll be good. Thank you for saying that. Now, folks, on the Grandchamp matter, do you and each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give to the members of this commission in the matter being heard will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Ms. Grandchamp? Ms. Grandchamp,
yes.
You need to say yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Ms. Furr? Is Ms. Furr muted? We'll come back.
Yeah, Nick, if you could just pause for a moment. I think Don is trying to get Harold promoted and can't unmute at the same time.
Okay, well, it's a matter of walking and chewing gum. So we'll hang on a minute. I'll make up for it by going too slowly later. Okay, all right, here comes Harold. Great. Let's see. We'll see if we get his video as well. Great, Harold. Sorry you had technical trouble. Harold, now we got you on the screen. If you will introduce yourself to the folks who are watching and tell them what your basis for being on the commission is.
Yes, my name is Harold Millett. I am born and raised here in Raleigh. I'm an architectural designer. I work for a firm, Integrate Design, in the Cameron Village area, and my interest just in the growth of Raleigh as a city, being a lifelong resident here. Thank
you very much. Okay. Now, I failed to administer the oath to Colette Kinane, and so Colette, I'll do the same with you. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give to the members of the commission in the matter being heard will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do.
This is Colette.
All right, thank you. Now, Colette, will you explain this matter for everyone?
Did you want to go back before I begin and administer the oath to Ms. Furr and Ms. Higuchi?
I got Ms. Furr. I failed to ask Ms. Higuchi if she, to say I do with regard to the oath. Ms. Higuchi, did you understand what we were doing?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me? I think I'm unmuted. Okay, yep, I'm here, I do.
All right, thank you for that. Now, Colette, if you'll proceed.
I will. One moment while the presentation loads. Application COA 114-2020. It is for 1301 Fillmore Street, in the Glenwood, Brooklyn Historic District. And the request is an after-the-fact installation of a 6-foot fence and gates along Jefferson Street. Next slide. So this is a view of prior to the fence installation. This is from the intersection of Jefferson and Fillmore. Next slide. And this is a view of the street of the previous fence. Next slide. And this is a current of the property from Fillmore and Jefferson. Next slide. And this is a view along Jefferson Street of the current fence that is being applied for. Next slide. And this is just another view along Jefferson Street. Next slide. And staff's recommendation is to deny with conditions.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, Ms. Grindshop, we'd be pleased to hear from you with regard to your application with respect to this fence. And of course, you understand that we'll have to evaluate the application as if it's not after the fact, and as if because you're seeking approval to do the fence. All right, please go ahead.
So regarding this hearing versus last time, we went through the process of putting the fence up for privacy and making sure I stayed within the exact same footprint of the previous fence. And then at the end of the hearing last time, we said that there was not enough evidence on either side to deny or confirm because we were in a new historic overlay. Glenwood, Brooklyn is a newer historic overlay, and I was the first case of having a fence on a corner. So then from there, I was told by the committee to find some more fences to add to the previous fences I had sent in, showing 6-foot fences in the Glenwood, Brooklyn area. So I have sent more fences to collect, showing that there are indeed 6-foot and higher fences in the Glenwood, Brooklyn neighborhood that match mine as well. So we're circling back around with new evidence showing that there is still existing 6-foot fences in the neighborhood along with mine.
Okay.
And then the other thing was someone in our neighborhood did send an email trying to get in on this hearing as well. I spoke to Colette earlier and she had suggested either if we could defer, or I had asked her if we could defer to next month so his email and his proceedings could be included as well. So that is the other piece of evidence that has recently just come in, but he had not submitted in time. So if it's able to make it fair for both sides, of both pro and against fence, I do have more information that Colette has already received. And so if we were to defer to next month, it could be included on the docket as well.
All right, hold on a second.
Okay.
Let me turn to Colette. Colette, what is the status of the pictures or additional things that Ms. Grindchamp's talking about?
Sure, this is Colette. New information was provided by by the applicant. It was a series of 4 photographs and addresses that were in the new information packet. We did get an email from a neighbor yesterday afternoon asking to participate, but it was after the sign up deadline. Informed them that they should have signed up by the previous Friday. But Ms. Grandchamp asked if it would be possible to defer to another month so that they would be able to sign up by the deadline.
Yes, I understand that. And so I also understood Ms. Grandchamp's comments with regard to this being a relatively new district. And but in all our districts, we periodically are presented with situations that we have not had before. And that's a reality for our oldest as well as our newest district. That said, members of the committee, Ms. Grandchamp has asked that the matter be deferred because there is apparently another person other than Ms. Furr and Ms. Hikashidi who would like to be heard on the matter. Given the situation, I'm inclined to give Ms. Grandchamp the benefit of every opportunity to present evidence in support of her position. And so I would, it's up to the group to decide what to do, however, but I'd entertain a motion to defer the matter, and let's be sure we've heard from everyone who wants to be heard on this before we rule on that. John Reese?
I agree with you. I'll be happy to make that motion, but I do have a couple of questions real quick, and I think for staff as much as anything else. When this case came up before, there was a kind of differentiation between screen wall and fence, and I felt like staff was going to kind of define that a little bit more clear so that the applicant knew the difference, because in the evidence that the applicant has provided, a couple of those options could be considered screen walls, not fences. And the second point is that one of the fences that she's shown, number 1 in her evidentiary, that fence does face Clay Street. I just wanted to let you know that, because I think if I read correctly in the information from staff, you mentioned that there were no fences that border alongside streets. So I wanted to kind of pick up those 2 points and make sure that when we discuss it next time, they may be resolved, or staff has a heads up about how to deal with that.
All right. So, but for the moment, you make a motion to defer, as I understand it. All right. So Janine McAuliffe seconds that motion. Any discussion on the motion? Rashay Height, you want to say something, or are you voting aye?
Yes, I just have just 2 comments. I think the first to John's point, I was looking at guideline 1.4.11 about the fence being 42 inches tall or 65% opaque. So in the sort of screen versus fence clarification, maybe there's part of that guideline that just needs to be unpacked a little bit more. I would also say, can we encourage the applicant to take, I guess, point number 8 in the staff report that's bolded about the 4 photographs, but then the addresses not being provided and the limited context. Can we encourage the applicant to come back and address that so that we can make an informed decision next time as well?
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Versailles, this is Colette. The addresses were provided as part of the new evidence.
Okay, great.
Okay. I'm just looking at my printout. Okay.
All right, so so staff and the applicant have heard from us as to things that we'd like to be educated on next time, and I hope that everyone will understand that that will be we can defer and defer. Next time will be the 3rd time it's come up, well, actually it'll be the 4th time it's come up, and so I think we need to all be prepared to make a decision at the next meeting, and let's be real sure that everybody who wants to be heard gets signed up so that we don't have any questions about providing adequate notice, adequate information, adequate opportunity. So that said, we have a motion to defer the Fillmore Street number 114-2020. And we have a second to that motion. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye, raising your right hand. The motion carries unanimously. It'll be carried forward, and we'll make a decision on that at the April meeting. So we've moved to COA 01-2021, Kieran McGordy, Justin Bunner, 504 East Jones Street, and Kieran and Justin and Colette. I'll administer the oath to you at this time. Do you and each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give, no matter being heard before this committee, is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do. Kieran?
I do.
Justin?
I do.
Colette?
I do.
All right, thank you. Now, Colette, if you'll explain this application for us.
This is case 1-2020 for 504 East Jones Street. It is in the Oakwood Historic District. It is also a Raleigh historic landmark. The request is to construct an accessory structure, alter driveway, construct walkway and patio, construct retaining wall, alter landscaping, and renew previous application 10718CA. Next slide. This is a view of East Jones Street. Next slide. This is a view of northeast, and the enclosed area just at the bottom of the screen is the parking area. Next slide. This is a view of the rear of the house, looking at the existing shed that has been approved to be demolished. Next slide. This is a view from a little bit back in the rear yard, looking towards the rear of the house. Next slide. At closer view of that rear yard section. Next slide. And showing the width of the rear yard from inside near that area. Next slide. So new information was provided. Staff's recommendation in the staff report requested that 4 things be provided before the case was discussed, and those 4 items were provided. It's an updated built area open space, updated tree protection plan, updated site plan, and a post-demolition site plan. Next slide. With the items provided, staff's suggestion is to discuss the proposal in light of guideline 1.6.11. It is not appropriate to introduce a new garage or accessory building. If doing so will detract from the overall historic character of the principal building and site. And guideline 1.2.8, in the residential historic districts, it is not appropriate to alter the residential character of the district by significantly reducing the proportion of the original built area to open space on a given site through new construction, additions, or surface paving.
Okay, thank you. Now, Ms. McGordy or Mr. Bonner, who do both of you want to speak or speak in the order shown on my list? Who would like to go first?
I can. I'm Kieran. I guess, did you, I don't know what you want us to present though.
Well, first of all, Kieran, if you will, do you have anything you want to say to us with respect to the comments by staff and whatever conditions and the like? I want to be sure you had an opportunity to voice any areas of concern with regard to what we're working on here in your application.
We don't have any areas of concern.
All right, so how about talking to us about the last point that Colette Canane raised with regard to that particular condition and the question of how accessory structures ought to be handled on the corner lot. That is a very bad paraphrase of what the points you raised, but if you'll go ahead, I really would like to hear from you on that point, because it is the point that we're being asked to pay particular attention to.
Okay, hold on. I'm just scrolling up to get the right language. Yes, okay. So the question before you is really about whether it will detract from the overall historic character of the principal building. Sorry, I can hear a lot of echo. And we really tried to design it to complement the original historic structure. We did some mirroring of the pitches of the roof. We tried to make it have a very low profile. We mirrored some elements of the porch detail, which is a reconstructed porch that we added on to try to like replicate the original. That was another COA, but I guess in our opinion, we don't see it as detracting, but rather just as complementing in a similar style, and it's set off from the house. I mean, nothing from the structure touches the new house, the original structure, or kind of even comes close to it. It's set back on the lot as much as it possibly can be. So yes, I think, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and this is Justin. I mean, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, I guess we view this structure as kind of tertiary. So, I mean, we obviously there's a primary structure of the, the four square house. We've done an addition that was, secondary, we feel, to that primary structure. And this is, and as Karen mentioned, we've done everything we could to, carry a lot of that design, a lot of the features into this now, tertiary structure that we want to add to the overall property. And I think it's noted in the staff comments that the property has a long history of outbuildings on the site. So we're continuing that tradition. We don't think we're overstepping it, mainly because of we're unfortunate in that that we do have a corner lot that gives us exposure to all points of the yard. However, that corner lot is rather large compared to many other lots in the neighborhood. So, we don't feel it's out of
proportion.
Yeah, it's out of proportion to either the primary structure or the lot. But I'll leave it at that.
I'll turn to members of the committee. Are there comments or questions of the applicant or staff? As you know, I'll close the public hearing after we've heard everything that we want to hear from staff or the applicants. Other folks, comments or questions? Versailles Height.
I just have a question, and I may have overlooked it. I see the updated proportion of built space to open space at 36% with the new accessory structure as proposed. But as far as the way we're considering 1.3.8, is there a percentage target that's reflective of this area or the district that we need to be comparing to?
I am not aware. We'll see what staff wants to comment, but I don't think that we have ever adopted a precise mathematical formula for application of this standard, because the wide variety of lot sizes and a wide variety of proportion of original structure to the parcel of land makes it difficult to be. We try to be consistent, but I don't think we've been able to reduce it to a mathematical formula. And this lot here is nearly twice as big as some others down the street, which would probably make a comparison of that sort a little more challenging anyway. Are there comments or questions from others? Tanya or Colette, do you want to answer the question or comment on the question from Verche with regard to evaluation of massing and lot coverage?
This is Colette. I think that Nick answered it very well. There is no precise formula or percentage. It's speaking to the guideline, it's looking at the original, and it is your opinion as a committee as to, you know, what is a great increase. There have been some applications where you as a committee have said that, you know, after this application, you've reached the maximum percentage for the property, and that should be written into the findings. But it's been different for each application.
All right, thank you for that. Are there other questions or comments? If not, I'll close the public hearing and turn to discussion internally. Anybody want to speak up? Janine?
Thank you. I want to say I do appreciate when I look at the accessory structure design that it was clearly done sensitively to the home as far as kind of thinking through what would be complementary. Although I will say when I was at the site, my concern is something that you don't see from the plans. It's when you're on East Street. When I imagine and I think the elevation, the East Street elevation shows this pretty well. The house, there is not much space between the house and that accessory structure. And I know it's been pushed back into the corner very well, but it still fills that whole sort of, I guess I'd call that streetscape view with mass. And I'm just picturing that as being too large because of that. There's really no space to move it back any further. It's a 30-foot long accessory structure, so it's not insignificant. And although I can see that I think we grew from, I think it was 18% of the built area to what is now 36, so literally doubling it. I almost feel like because some of that is hardscape happening towards the back where it's not as visible from East Street, it's sort of where those trees are on the, that would be the, I guess, which side would that be? If that's east, that's going to be your, further to the east, I guess. Yeah. That, I realize there's a lot of lot coverage there, and I do think they're sort of pushing the limit on what makes sense with that. But my concern is just that this accessory structure is the same height and really sort of almost extends that house, that whole wall of East Street. So that's the sort of challenge I'm having with seeing this as being deferential to the house.
All right, further discussion, comment from the rest of you. Verche, hi.
I think I just wanted to add, I guess in addition to kind of considering the built mass, I do appreciate the sensitivity and scale, and thinking about this as a like the house is the landmark. So kind of we're talking about this I feel like in a little bit of a different way than we've talked about some of the other applications where it's a part of a contributing character of a neighborhood. But that said, I think what concerns me a little bit is actually guidelines 1.6.10 and then 1.6.12 that speak to it's not appropriate to introduce an accessory building similar in appearance, materials, and scale to historic accessory structures that creates a false historical appearance. And then point 12, it's not appropriate to introduce features or details to a garage or an accessory building in an attempt to create a false historical appearance. So I think those were two, as I was reviewing the drawings, those were two items that came up to me as a potential concern.
Okay, thank you. Are there comments or questions from others on the committee? So, well, Janine, I'll ask you this: is it your perception that if the porch were were 4 feet, the porch line were 4 feet further to the south, for example, creating additional separation between the original structure and the smaller porch, that would be useful. It wouldn't address the concern of Verche height necessarily, that they've done too good a job of copying the original.
Right.
To paraphrase her.
Right. I think what you're mentioning there, as far as just essentially increasing the distance from the existing house, to me would definitely feel better. It almost looks as if it's sort of a connected, or almost, extension of the existing house. And maybe to Verche's point, it really does have so many similarities that even just adding that chimney just makes it feel like such a part of that house.
Now, in thinking about it, it looks like that the north wall of this accessory structure is set up to be an extension of that low retaining wall that extends most of the way across the backyard. And so I wonder if what do you guys are the design people, not me, but I wonder if we move it 4 feet from that wall, does it do much or just cut it up? Anything, John Reese?
I agree with Janine in terms of it probably being too close to the existing house. I think by looking at the west elevation, I think that, and this goes back to the proportion issue of it overwhelming, I think, and changing the character of the overall historical nature of the original house. If just the open space, if the width of the open space was more relative to the width of the shed itself, I think it may provide enough distance between the existing house and the existing or the new proposed little structure to kind of differentiate the two enough and reduce the scale of that accessory structure a lot. And I think by doing that, it would move the wall along with it so that the whole line just moves further back on the site and separates itself from the house a little bit more. Relative to Verche's comments, I think that there's enough differentiation just in the details to counteract the too much sameness scenario. I think this is a scenario where the details are going to make it be differentiated from the original.
So one of the ways you can do that is by making the accessory less ornate and simpler in its detailing than the original. And that's one way you differentiate historic from the new. Janine McCullough.
And to that point, I do see in the elevations a distinction between those details, between the accessory structure and the house. So that I feel like is, to me, that's sort of a distinction that I think is working between those two structures, kind of telling that story. One question, maybe it's just something other commissioners might comment on. I might have missed it, but I'm noticing the steps for this project are moving towards the south, where that back area where the accessory structure is stepping up. So it's raised a little bit. And I guess when I was at the site, I didn't sort of catch that there was a grade change there. But it makes me think it would almost be working better if it were the opposite. It was stepping down. And I guess, did anybody have any comments on that?
John Reese, were you wanting to comment?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I not knowing, I had not been out to this site to see it, but if there's a scenario where that change in plane could be reversed, it will further give more dominance to the existing house, and that you step down versus step up. again, that may be something that we have to go back and talk to the owners about in terms of why they couldn't do that, or there may be some kind of grade change there we don't see. But I do think from a conceptual standpoint, if the accessory building were a step lower than the existing house, so that the house is more on a plinth versus the little accessory building being on a plinth, it'd be a lot more successful in terms of being able to keep the historical dominance of the existing house.
Well, I believe if when you look at it on the ground, there is a grade change so that there is that rear area back of the retaining wall is roughly a foot 18 inches higher than the corridor that would at present go to the old garages to be removed. And so I don't think that realistically the applicants can't regrade the entire historic property to reverse that grade change. So they probably, but on the other hand, I understand that presents challenges in terms of making the accessory structures subservient to the original, that you've got to deal with a grade change that you really can't do much about. Rashay Height, were you getting ready to say something else? No, you were not. Okay. Other comments? So with that said, the question then is, of course, we have an application before us, and it is in the form that it is, and there is not a condition proposed by staff with regard to redesign, changing the basic footprint of the accessory structure and the like. Is it your, first of all, I wonder if we could entertain a motion to reopen the matter, because I'd kind of like to hear from the applicants on the discussion so far. And so John Reese moves to reopen the hearing, and Janine seconds that motion. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. The motion carries unanimously. And so, Mr. McGordy and Mr. Boner, you're hearing the discussion with regard to the size of the addition, and the question of whether it could be made more subservient to the original, and whether it needs to be more clearly detached from the original. And we'd like to hear from you on two things: your thoughts as to our comments, number one, and number two, your thoughts as to the deferral of the matter so that you can take this into account before we're in a position to vote on it.
Okay, I didn't quite understand the second. I understand responding to your comments. What was the second thing?
Well, there were two, as I got it, Karen, there were two things. One, that the structure it ends up being functionally so close to the original house and the previous additions that are already there, that it needs to be a bigger break. And if that means making the porch a little smaller, there's that piece, just to have a greater break between the accessory structure and the main building. And secondarily, any comments with regard to whether the design is tends to overshadow the original or not be adequately subservient in its appearance to the original.
Okay. So I just took notes when you talked, so I might just touch on a few of the things that were brought up. I don't know if it matters, but the built to mass, the original, what you're looking at is the house from like 1890. The 18%. The 18%. So it is not double. This structure is not doubling it. This application's not doubling it. But it didn't sound like that was a huge issue. I just wanted to make sure that was clear, that the requirement for providing the data is to the period of significance. The
Yeah, so we got that part, and I see a lot of heads nodding. So yeah,
Okay.
if you can move to the other concerns.
Sure. So the accessory structure is at least 10 feet separated from the house. I guess for us visually, that's a decent amount of separation. I get what you're saying, that if you were like walking down the sidewalk and were at a diagonal from the house, it might look like it's connected, but if you kept walking, you would eventually see the straight on view, which would give you a very clear separation from the house. And the reason we chose that distance, which is something you already talked about, is the retaining wall line, and that is the natural grade of the yard. It has sort of eroded over time, so we are kind of bringing it back to, historically, the house had a lot of landscaping in this two-tier setup, and so we're trying to kind of bring back that line, and that's the line that we hit by continuing the structure at that level. And like you said, unfortunately, we cannot like go lower. We have to go higher because of the grade of the yard. In terms of it mimicking like a false sense of history, I guess don't see that being an issue, because it's kind of more a modern function. You know, the structure is this shed with the porch on it that is actually not like didn't happen historically. We're just trying to make it complement the house as just the style that we're going for, instead of sometimes you see in the neighborhood a real juxtaposition between additions and houses, and we just prefer what we think of as complementary, because we think it just blends better. But I know that is a topic that y'all have dealt with before. So we really did try to make it at least as low in profile, like height-wise, as low as we could go to be subservient. And if you look at that one drawing, you see that the roof line is lower even than our addition roof line that is below the original house. So it does step down, even though the grade of the yard goes against us for trying to do that.
Okay, thank you for that. And members of the committee, I think that Karen would probably also want to point out that the distance, being as it is an extension of that retaining wall, means that the distance is roughly the width of the old one-lane driveway that came to that old garage. And so in reality, it probably is a driveway width apart, whether that ultimately is doing the job or not, that is about what it is. And so is anybody on the committee want to ask the applicants anything before I close the public hearing again? John Reese, is there anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of confirm with staff that in certain scenarios, as we've seen before, we have the ability to, because the setback on the corner is 5 feet from each property line, alter that if we feel like it's not going to be an impact or going to be a problem for the neighbors, and or it may help resolve some of the issues that we're discussing, i.e. the separation from the house.
Yes, I think it's true that we could do that if we thought that was necessary to accomplish the objective. But that's something for us to discuss. Anything else from members of the committee? And comments from staff? All right, we've heard from everybody then. I'm going to close the public hearing and go back to internal discussions within the committee leading toward some action here. Based on that additional information, are there thoughts among you as to whether we ought to defer or proceed? I'll say for my part, John, with respect to your comment about moving it further over into the corner, honestly, I think my preference is it's a 17-foot width porch and I think a 12-foot width garage. And if traditionally garages with a shed were more like 12 and 12, then we probably could address a number of these concerns by concluding that this porch only need to be about 4 feet or 5 feet, whatever the will of the group is, and that would A, give it the distance, and B, wouldn't get in the setback either. So, so then, John Reese, you had other questions, comments?
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with you 100%, Nick, on that. I think that staff suggestion here on this applicant is to defer this to allow the applicant to provide additional information anyway. I don't want to jump the gun, but I would move that we, if I can move, to allow them to follow through with this information that staff is looking at, i.e. the tree protection program and updated site plans to show the existing and proposed fencing and the original and proposed built area calculations. That being more on a proportion scenario. I know I use that word all the time. Proportion scenario versus a numbers crunching value in my mind. But it would allow the applicants to go back and incorporate our comments into the designs to consider the idea of reducing the dimensions on that accessory structure more in line with how you described a traditional garage and shed lean-to.
In fact, as to the comments of staff, I think that a lot of that actually was addressed by the applicants before we started this hearing, but that doesn't mean there aren't other reasons to defer based on this discussion here, would be my thought. Janine?
I agree with John's suggestion as well to defer, and I will say too, historically, often accessory structures were very close to property lines, didn't adhere to our modern 5-foot setbacks even. So maybe there's some combination that they could be looking at of shrinking this as well as moving, and working with both of those, we might get something that doesn't seem quite to challenge the proportion of the existing house.
Okay, are there other questions or comments? Don, do I understand you that at the end of your comments, you made a motion to defer? Is there a second to that motion? Janine McCullough seconds the motion to defer in order for the applicant to take our comments into account before we act on the matter. Any discussion on that motion? Brashay Height, you want to say anything? No, Errol? Okay. All in favor of the motion to defer, signify by raising your right hand. The motion carries. Harold, did you vote? Yeah, Harold votes aye. So the motion carries with 5 votes. So that matter will be deferred. Karen and Justin, frankly, I love that house. I'll just tell you right now, I love that house, and we know you do too. And
we do.
And I've got all the house I can afford, so I'm not trying to buy it, but just know that we care just as much as you about doing this thing right. So thank you for that, and hopefully you will have an opportunity to look at it so that we can get back on schedule and you be ready for us next month. So with that, we will move to the next matter, which is 713 Hinsdale Street, and I see that John Reese is on the list of speakers, and so he seeks to recuse from consideration participation in this matter, and so I have a motion for Rashay Height that he be recused, and a second from Harold Millett. All in favor of that motion, raise your right hand. Okay, and so we will ask that John Reese be converted to a participant for the moment. I mean, to a observer or whatever it is, instead of a panel member. And now we'll go to the staff for an explanation of this particular proposal. Colette Canane.
Would you like to meet before I do the presentation or after?
Help, I'll get my job done right, and so thank you for that. We have a number of speakers on this. Ms. Asbury, Ms. Rizzaglia, Mr. Fussell, Mr. Reese, Unit, and Mr. Sykes, and as well as Colette Canane. You and each of you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give in the matter being heard before this committee will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Signify by saying I do when I call on you. Colette Canane.
This is Colette. I do.
Okay, Ms. Asbury. You may be muted, Ms. Asbury. We don't hear you. I'll come back to her.
Okay, can you hear us now?
All right, now I hear you.
Yeah, and so this is Miriam Asbury, I do, but also my husband is joining, and Damon Asbury, so.
All right. All right, thank you for that. And Mr. Asbury, will you say I do also, please?
I do.
I do. All right. And Jason Renzaglia?
This is Jason. I do.
Thank you for that. Rhett Fussell?
This is Rhett. I do.
John Reese?
I do.
Lisa Hunett? I don't hear. John Sykes?
I do.
And if any names I mangled, I apologize. Lisa Hunett, I'll give you one more chance. Okay, so maybe she didn't make the call. So this time, thank you, Colette. Now, will you go ahead and explain this application for us?
All right, this is COA 17, 2021 for 713 Hinsdale Street. It is in the Glenwood, Brooklyn Historic District, which is a street side historic overlay district. This application includes a number of projects. After the fact are changes to a previously approved COA, including raise windows, install windows with grills between the glass, alter vinyl trim, install ridge vent, alter eaves, expose porch rafter tails, install exterior lights, install wood textured fiber cement siding, install gutters and downspouts, install vinyl soffits in addition, remove shed and place shutters and remove storm door. And not after the fact is to replace a fence. Next slide. This is a view of the property from Hinsdale Street. Next slide. This is a view of the east side of the property. Next slide. This is a view of the property on Gaston Street. Next slide. And another view of the Gaston Street side. Next slide. This is a view from further down Gaston Street looking towards the rear of the property. Next slide. And a view of the corner on Gaston. I believe this is the proposed fence location. Next slide. So staff's recommendation is to discuss the following. One, if wholesale removal of the vinyl siding on the house constitutes a change requiring a COA and the possible alteration of vinyl siding and trim, the alteration to the eaves, the installation of vinyl soffits on the addition, the exposed rafter tails on the front porch, and the replacement of windows on the historic house after July 2018. Next slide. There was new information provided, including a letter from an engineer and a presentation with additional information. I'll also note that Ms. Asbury did sign up to speak and completed the electronic oath form. However, Mr. Damon Asbury did not sign up in advance or complete the oath form.
Right. Thank you for that. And we do have processes that we need to follow in these matters. I'm going to call on Miriam Asbury, and Ms. Asbury, I'll ask you to walk through this. And we understand this to be essentially your request to modify the COA that you had received previously to accommodate the various changes that it appears you are in the process of making. And so, of course, my first question is, I guess, in a way, is what were you thinking that you have made all these changes, having come before us and gotten a COA that had a set of requirements on it?
Okay, so, sorry. First of all, I thought that when we were signing up to present today, we're getting a lot of echo on our side. I don't know if you are on yours. That it was for both Damon and I. So I'm not comfortable speaking to some of the issues in our presentation, as he's a general contractor and can explain it a lot better than I can. So if we need to, I don't know, defer until next month and get him properly signed up, that would be my preference, because I can't speak to some of the issues as well as he can.
All right, members of the committee, we've got a request from Ms. Asbury to defer in order that her and that Mr. Asbury could speak. And I will inquire of Mr. Asbury if there is any comment from his point of view. My inclination is to be sure that both of them can speak and be sure that we don't have a procedural issue or error in the way we proceed here.
Nick, I think I agree with you. If the rules are supposed to be adhered to, and if there's objection from the other side that's raised now or later, it could be a procedural problem. So I think deferral is probably the best strategy here.
All right. This meeting just got a lot shorter. Is there a motion to defer at the request of the applicant, Ms. Asbury? There's a question beforehand. Brochet makes the motion, but Janine has a question.
Well, I suppose I know the answer, but I just have to ask. Because there are so many people here ready to move this forward, there is no way with the procedural requirements here to have the other half of the applicant be sworn in to the point where this can happen, or because otherwise, yes, I'm going to vote to defer as well.
My inclination is that we've got a set of rules, and that if we vary from them, someone will be angry about it. And just looking at the number of persons with interest in this matter, I think there is increased risk that this matter is going to get further review. And so I'd rather, and I understand this will end up being an imposition on the others to have to try to make time to be on our meeting next month as well. But we balancing the equities here. I don't know which way this thing will go, but there are going to be people who are disappointed no matter what happens, and that's how it is. So I understand your concern, and I have that concern. I know that I would feel it if I were one of these 5 people that signed up to speak in opposition. But I have concern from Ms. Asbury as well, and her desire that Mr. Asbury, the contractor, be able to talk about whatever issues might support the changes that are in process. So there's a motion by Brochet Height to defer the matter, and a second by Janine McAuliffe to defer. And is there any discussion on that motion? All in favor of deferring for a month? To be sure everyone is signed up, please signify by saying raise your right hand. All right, thank you for that. The motion carries unanimously. And that matter is deferred until next month. And I would urge everybody listening to make sure that there is no doubt about your being on the list of speakers in ample time. So thank you for that, and we will deal with it next month. So now the next matter before us is a request that Mr. Reese be readmitted to the committee for participation in the next matter. Michelle Height makes that motion. Jenny McCullough seconds the motion. We could probably have a lot of discussion on this, folks. We might want to think about it. All in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. All right, the motion carries, and you got a unanimous vote, Mr. Reese. That probably won't happen again. Thank you for that. Now, with respect to 223 East Lenore Street, the next matter, the persons who signed up were Jonathan Mole, John Scheimer, Amit Malhotra. I hope I said that correctly. Do you, as well as Aaron Morton, swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give and the testimony you're about to give and the matter being heard will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please say I do when I call your name. Aaron Morton?
I do.
Thank you for that. Jonathan Moe?
I do.
John Scheimer?
I do. I do.
Thank you. Amit Malhotra?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, Aaron, will you explain the application for us, please?
All right, this is case COA 25-2021 for 223 East Lenore Street in the Prince Hall Historic District. The request is to remove a rear portion of the historic house, construct a two-story rear addition with a tiered porch, construct roof terrace, construct two chimneys, alter existing front window, alter driveway, add rear parking area, remove two trees, replace existing windows, alter existing roof, replace existing gutters, alter existing paint colors, and install skylights. Next. And this is a photo of 223 East Lenore Street, an oblique street view from East Lenore. Next. And a better straight-on view of the front elevation of the house. Next. This is the east side existing driveway. Next. And a view of the rear of the existing house as well as a significant portion of the rear lot. Next. And a reverse view of that same area. Next. This is the west property line side elevation of the house, looking back toward East Lenore. Next. And a view of that west elevation from East Lenore. Next. Staff suggestion is to discuss the following: the significance of the built area and built mass increase, the congruity of the proposed roof terrace, and the congruity of aluminum siding proposed on the addition. And next, for the application pending receipt of the following: a site plan with accurate critical root zones and a tree protection plan prepared by an ISA certified arborist, including additional information on the use of the geocellular mat. Next. And I neglected to add a new info tab, but the applicant has provided a significant amount of new information that has been provided to you all through board docs, including a built area and built analysis of nearby well-related properties, additional information on window conditions and replacement, additional evidence for the roof terrace, proposal for rear deck screening, additional gutter information, as well as siding, skylights, mechanical equipment location, evidence for parking screening, and then also the tree protection mat geocellular material.
Okay, thank you for that. Has everybody on the committee had adequate opportunity to look at all the additional information? Not? Okay. I think what I will do then is I'd like to hear from the applicants, but just understand that we're leaning toward a deferral, but because there's so much information and it's pretty important that we digest that. So that said, I'll call on you in order. We'll be glad to hear from you, and of course it might have an impact on how we proceed from here. Mr. Jonathan Moe, do you want to talk first?
Hi, good evening. Yeah, thank you. So I can briefly sum up some of the key points of that additional information.
Can you can you speak a little louder, please?
Of course. Is this better?
Yeah, if you'll just keep the volume up, yeah.
Okay. So we received the staff report and recommendations a week ago, and we took those points into account and tried to respond to any issues or missing information within the time scale of the past week. And so we submitted some additional information covering some of those points. So one key item that was recommended for discussion that we'd like to address specifically is the proportion of built mass and built area. The staff report recommended that this issue is discussed by the committee, and also in particular that the proposed parking area at the rear be reduced in area. We had not initially submitted a built mass or built area analysis of comparable properties in the district, but did carry out a review of this after receiving that staff report. And we found that comparable properties that were 2-story and had driveways and off-street parking more or less universally had similar or greater built mass and built areas as the proposed lot. So that is proportionately, obviously, this is one of the larger lots in the area, but in terms of those proportion calculations, it was very much equivalent to the comparable properties within the district. Also regarding built mass specifically, we do just want to say that we felt the proposals aren't overscaled for the lot and the context, especially given the scale of existing buildings directly adjacent to the east and the south of the lot, and this lot's position as a threshold between disparate urban grains. It's at the point of the transition between more open, larger scale open grain to the east, and then the more traditionally residential scale of East Lenore Street as you move west.
Before you go ahead, Mr. Moe, did you, with respect to these other properties that you looked for, did you have an opportunity to actually do the math as to what those numbers would look like? It might be important that you actually put forward the numbers.
Nick, this is Erin. May I interrupt for a moment?
Yes, ma'am.
I apologize. I have just realized that the new information that the applicant provided did not successfully upload to board docs, which means that it was not made available to the public or to the committee members. I apologize profusely to the applicant for that mistake. Tanya has offered to screen share that new information as a presentation. If you'd like to discuss it tonight, there is enough information there that you all might need to digest it to make a decision, but I'll leave that up to you all if you'd like to have an additional discussion tonight without that information.
Well, I guess my thought is that it's going to be difficult for us to follow everything on the fly, but it's a question of what the rest of you think. The rest of you may be a quicker study than me anyway. Janine, what were you going to say?
I'm going to suggest just sort of in the interest of the applicant and perhaps maybe giving him a chance to hear some of our comments, maybe we could go through it, but I personally don't know that I'm going to be comfortable sort of soaking it all in and addressing it that quickly. But I certainly think we've deferred everything up till now. I'd hate, we have a little window of opportunity here maybe to see the new information this way.
Yeah, we've got, it's not that we don't have time in the context of what our typical meetings are like. But Mr. Mole, if you want to go ahead knowing that we haven't really seen the material until you walk through again, keep on going with respect to what you tried to do. And so you were talking, you were getting ready to move beyond the parking and the lot coverage when I interrupted you to ask if you had actually done those calculations, because I thought we would end up needing to have them if we, in order to make the right judgment here. So, but if you want to pick up there, Mr. Mole, and we're all sorry that we don't have the material, and because I'm sure you worked pretty hard last week to try to have it turned in apt time for us, but things happen. So please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, as suggested, if we are able to at least discuss that, I appreciate it. It might be too much information to digest, but it would be great at least to go away with some initial feedback or comments on the additional information. So we did do built area and built mass calculations based on the information available on the IMAPs, and that was heated square footage of properties, deeded acreage of the lots, and then using the area tool on the IMAPs to measure things like driveways as they were visible from the aerial views. And we tried to be conservative when we were measuring driveways, for example, and not over measure. And we did find, as I said, that proportionately, in terms of the percentages, comparable properties were similar, if not more covered than the net that we are proposing. So we do have a sheet that lays that out for a number of properties. I think we stopped at 20 properties because it was quite a time-consuming exercise, but we do have that for 20 properties within about a block and a half radius of the application site.
All right, thank you for doing that, and we'll and hopefully we'll be with that kind of radius so we can be reasonably sure they're within the district of that and would be relevant to this discussion. So go ahead.
Thank you. So we do have that calculation. Also, just specifically commenting on the extent of the proposed parking area and why it is the size that it is. So our aim with the increase in floor area that's proposed for the building is essentially to try and provide sufficient parking. And the benefits of that are that, if there's an increased occupancy of the building, that it doesn't overcrowd street parking. And also with a view to the root protection in that area that is also going to be discussed. Our idea would be that if we can be realistic about the number of cars that are likely to be parked on the lot in the future, and we make provision for that, we can design root protection measures that will actually be effective to accommodate any future parking. So that was our approach with providing what we felt was a realistic number of parking spaces to suit the property. There was also comments that in the staff report that the parking area should ideally, that it is screened from the street by virtue of its location behind the building and being offset to the west side of the lot. But it advised that screening between the application site and the property to the west would also be beneficial. one of the clarifications we made in the additional information was that due to the limited width of the lot and trying to accommodate usable parking spaces, it didn't leave a lot of width left over for screen planting in that location. So visual screening would be possible by means of an opaque fence, for example. We didn't propose that. We felt that that might not be preferable to either the occupiers of this building or the neighbouring property. Right now, there's a metal vertical rail fence or railing between the two properties, and we felt that screening the parking with an opaque timber fence might be worse than just seeing a couple of cars parked there. We also just wanted to comment on the roof terrace. We understand that there aren't a lot of examples of this type of roof terrace in the area. But we did just want to point out that there is one present on top of 216 East Lenore Street, which is opposite the site and 2 lots to the west. It is a different style of property. I believe it was constructed in 1919, so it's not too much of a dissimilar age of property. And we also just wanted to draw particular attention to the proposed photo montages of the addition that we provided, giving views from the street. They were in the original submission towards the end on pages 36 to 39. So with the roof terrace and with the design strategy as a whole, our approach was to focus on mitigating views from East Lenore Street on approach from the east and the west. The property is very well screened from the sides and the rear, but with that in mind, we tried to visualize how the thing would look completed from a number of angles from East Lenore Street. The main angle of view is going to be on approach from the east, because there is a slightly wider than typical gap between this building and the multi-family development on the next lot. So we'll have 3 proposed views showing 3 different angles of how that view would change as you approach from that side, and one angle which is a slightly more oblique view that you would get of the west side of the building on approach from the other side, and that's the one that shows the roof terrace. So we just felt that view was quite key in demonstrating that, in our view, that roof terrace wouldn't be very obtrusive. And although not typical on other examples of this age of building, we felt that it wasn't detrimental to the character of the area as a whole. So those are the 2 things on the roof terrace, just reiterating, how we've tried to design that particular element of the building, and also just drawing attention to one precedent of a roof terrace within the district on the opposite side of the same street. So a couple of other smaller but I think important clarifications and changes that we made as part of that submission of additional information. We did take note of the comment that windows should not be replaced unless they can be demonstrated to be beyond repair, or deteriorated beyond repair specifically. We returned to site to inspect the windows that we were proposing to replace after receiving that comment, and found that the double hung windows on the first floor, so probably the most character defining of those original windows, a number of the sashes, although not in fantastic condition, are not, from what we've seen, beyond repair. And so we actually proposed to omit the replacement of some of those sashes, but noted that some of the exterior trims and the timber sills are in fact beyond repair, showing signs of rot and high moisture readings, and would certainly need replacing. So our proposal was then to omit the complete replacement, but to request a condition, if necessary, that required further details of a schedule of repair per window. They would allow some sort of further detailed investigation of what's actually required to each window to make those fairly substantial repairs. So the information included a revised markup of the elevations to clarify what was proposed for replacement, what was proposed for repair, and what was new windows, and also some photographs demonstrating certain parts of windows that are clearly beyond repair, and also the rectangular attic windows and the windows in the foundation wall we also felt were beyond repair and would propose to replace.
All right, thank you for that. In your in the photographic evidence that we will see when we look at that, with the view from the southwest, i.e. over to the left of the house from the street, are we going to be able to tell how much of that rooftop terrace is visible without regard to the tree that's between the curb and the sidewalk or in the front yard at this time?
Yes, so that view is part of the initial submission, not the follow-up submission, so you should have access to that. That is shown with those trees all removed completely because that is what we're proposing, so we're not trying to screen that view with trees that will no longer be there upon completion.
All right, thank you for that. Let's see, John Reese had his hand up first, and then I'll call on Janine.
I was just wondering if staff could show us what we haven't seen, just so that there's a visual to what the applicant is talking about, so that we've got a clear vision about what the correlation between the words and the graphics are.
Nick, this is Erin. If that's all right with you, Tanya can pull that up now.
Yeah, that'll be fine. We're not going to act on this until the public and everyone has had a chance to examine it in more detail, including us. But it'll help us in our future study, I think, if we can
certainly understand.
Okay, thank you.
While that's coming up, if it would help, I had a couple of the more minor clarifications that would be very quick to speak to.
That's fine. Go ahead, Mr. Mole, and then we'll look at the material.
Thank you. So as well as the windows, we had stated that we were going to use vinyl gutters. That's entirely my mistake. We are not proposing that. We're proposing aluminum gutters, which are prevalent in the district. OG seems to be the most common in the district, but given the 1909 age of the house, research suggests that a half-round profile would be more appropriate. So we'd like to get some discussion on that if we can, on what would be found most acceptable. Mechanical units, we think that would probably be 2 AC units of a similar size to the existing one that's currently present, and that would be located in a similar position in the west side yard. It would be further back from the street than the existing unit and could potentially be screened from view from the street with planting or some sort of built element such as a fence. Regarding the siding and the recommendation of staff to discuss the appropriateness of the use of aluminum siding on the addition, I proposed that because I thought that a change might not be deemed appropriate and that it might be deemed more appropriate to just match what was on the existing main building. If smooth fiber cement siding is more appropriate, for example, as one of the recommendations of staff, we would be more than happy to take that approach and use smooth fiber cement siding on the addition. And finally, just to clarify, the comments mentioned that a different hatch was shown on the parking spaces compared to the turnaround area. Just to clarify, that was just to show the size of the parking spaces themselves. It's not supposed to denote a change in surface treatment. It would be consistent across the parking and turnaround area, and that is proposed as gravel. And just one last clarification, or just to make sure it's highlighted, we have proposed, as well as some other things like reinstating an originally proportioned window on the front gable, but we are currently proposing to reinstate 2 chimneys in their original locations. In the submission, it did state that that was subject to feasibility, and I just wanted to make sure that in the committee's discussions that that they had noticed that and were aware of it. Essentially, we're going to have to do a bit more work to review the structure and design and cost those elements to make sure that they are financially viable within the context of the project. So it is our hope to do that because we feel that they're quite an important character feature that we'd like to reinstate. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that that is subject to a cost analysis and feasibility check on those 2 particular elements.
All right, thank you for that. Let's see, John Reese, what part of the material did you particularly want to see?
I think I'm seeing a good chunk of it right now in front of me. I think what I really wanted to see, and this is something I think that when we look at this again in the future, is just like they have shown in the plan, what's new, what's existing, what is being renovated. They do the same thing with the elevations to understand exactly the question at hand, and that is the massing issues that we really need to discuss. Because right now, while I see windows being new windows, existing windows, or existing windows to be replaced, I'm not seeing exactly what sections in the elevations are existing, what sections in the elevation are being modified, and what sections are being new.
All right, thank you for that. Now then, it may be that that Aaron can see the elevation there that would answer that that question if it's here.
Nick, this is Aaron. Certainly the original submission should have delineating lines of the original roof form. Those colorized window, that diagram that Tanya was showing while Jonathan was speaking tonight has a similar dashed line showing the original roof form. So everything beyond that roof line is going to be new, and then just to the back of the gable ends on each side, generally speaking. On the east elevation, you can see the 3 double hung windows in yellow that are existing, and then there's a slight setback there into the new addition. It's a similar situation on the west side. You are not able to see any of the new addition in the front elevation here. But the original submission also has delineation.
Sorry for interrupting. I understand all of that, Aaron. Thank you very much. The dotted line I couldn't see because it was too small, but now I see it. Again, I think it would just be helpful from an understanding of the massing that they do the same thing in the elevations that they've done in that roof plan to help us really understand how much mass are we adding here, both in height and in depth, versus just showing that differentiation just in the plan. I'd like to see it in the elevations. That's just that's a request to the applicant.
Thank you for that. Any other comment or question from members of the committee for the applicant at this stage? Janine?
Well, I wanted to make a comment that is sort of based on the initial packet proposal that we got, not this new information, but I think it still is relevant because I didn't see a change. And my comment is just one I would have made if, typically reviewing this, and that is just that I'm concerned about the roof form extruding back uninterrupted the way that it does, because often we're sort of promoting a break in additions from existing in a way that differentiates and gives a little bit of demarcation of that point. And I know You've successfully jogged in the walls, but the roof just is, and the roof is just a beautiful, it's so character defining. So to see it just extrude and not kind of break from the original, show that break from the original form to the addition was just a concern I wanted to raise.
Or comments from the rest of you before we defer? John Reese?
The other thing I'd like to bring up is this issue of the parking. I may be out of date on stuff, but I didn't know that you could take parking all the way to the fence line and take that parking strip over the setback. Right now, that parking is right up butted against the fence or against the property line because they're not suggesting to put a fence there. But I do have some major concerns about how that parking is being handled in the back. So I just wanted to throw that in there as a red herring for me.
Okay, thank you for that. Anything else that the rest of you want to focus on and suggest that the applicant or others be prepared to talk about when we come back on this?
Nick, this is Erin. Can I provide a couple of additional comments?
Yeah, I'd be glad for you to do that.
Sure. And again, apologies, everybody. This would be much easier to have the conversation, obviously, with the packet in front of you. I do feel that 2 points that you could discuss without the new information tonight are a couple of points from the staff report regarding the rear entry doors and whether or not they're appropriate to the structure as flush doors, as well as the aluminum siding proposed on the addition. Any comments you can provide to the applicant on that would be appreciated.
Well, I will tell you that I start out negative on the aluminum siding. And I think the door is probably a detail that would be conditioned with staff and probably wouldn't wind up being a flush plain door. But that's just my reaction. There are the comments from the rest of you. John Reed?
I'm with you, Nick, on both points. I'm also wanting to throw in there the issue that I have the same concerns as mentioned, suggested in the staff report about the congruity of the roof terrace. It sounds like it's a marvelous hotel amenity, but I'm not quite sure that it fits within the congruity of this historic structure.
And along the same line, I will note that the other one in the neighborhood where there was a rooftop terrace was clearly not visible from the street in any way at all. And because most of us were on that case too. So I do reference that. Okay, and then yes, I'd be fascinated to read about the material, the pervious material that would be in the parking area. I haven't seen it yet. I'm very interested in it. Depending on what it is, it might be useful in a lot of applications, but I need to see and think about how that's really going to work. And the other thing is that for the applicant's sake, it is helpful, I think, that this lot happens to be really deep and that there is a lot more land back there, even behind this parking area as shown. And I noted that as I went by and looking at the original for you. So for Shay Height, you've been quiet. Is there anything you want to ask them to focus on or have a question about at this stage?
I guess I just kind of want to give them the benefit of the doubt and review everything. I think I have probably more general concerns about some of the things that Janine mentioned with regard to the roof and that stepping back and the true distinction between the addition and the respect that pays to the building as it currently exists. From what I'm seeing it right now, it's not very complimentary as far as, a number of things that are listed in the guidelines. So anyway, I don't want to belabor it, but yeah, I just kind of want to give them a chance to understand so can
Yeah,
get
okay, that's fine. We absolutely are wanting to flag some things without prejudging anything because we haven't had opportunity to examine the material in any detail yet with all these revisions. So, all right, if there's nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion to defer this application here. John Reach makes that motion. Janine McCullough seconds the motion to defer 223 East Lenore Street. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Thank you. All right, the motion carries, and that matter is deferred. And I will say, folks, that we better pack a lunch when we come next month, and that's not going to be pretty. And then staff, I would ask staff, Tanya, with respect to the deferred applications. I know that we're not being called on to make a vote on them, but do you know if there's anything moving on any of those three?
Two of them are just, they have not said yes to the virtual meeting. I'm not sure about the third. I think Colette and Aaron can better say to that. While they're looking that up, I will say that we may be looking at perhaps a second meeting for next month. The agenda was already going to be long, but we will get back to you if we think that that is necessary.
And secondly, I guess, Tanya, I'll ask, has there been any rumblings at the city level about resuming live meetings?
I will be sending a poll shortly to get some feedback on that. No decision has been made as of yet, no.
All right, thank you. Are there other comments, questions?
Janine, you're muted. I think you just need to jump in.
I will do that. Thank you. I have a question. That's something I just haven't recognized how this works moving forward. But when a project is deferred to the next month's meeting, are applicants able, is it possible for them to send new material in? Like, do they have the same deadline prior, a week before, so you can share new info? In other words, is Mr. Mole going to take advantage of the comments we just made and be able to add information for us?
I'm going to let Colette answer that, or Aaron. They're more familiar with the time frame. It depends on the particular meeting, as whether or not they will meet the deadline for getting us new information. I think it's next week for the April meeting.
So Colette here. The deadline for providing new information to be included in the staff report was actually yesterday for April applicants. We could potentially have a little wiggle room, especially with the most recent application on Lenore Street. You know, all of the new information that they provided will be able to be included in the new staff report for April. They do have the opportunity to provide additional information, just like these applicants, in advance of the meeting without being included in the staff report. So there is a possibility for new information to be submitted.
I think that was my question. Are we going to be having even more to review for these ones that just got deferred? And the answer is probably yes.
This is Aaron. I'll add that for deferred applications that provided new information for this meeting that wasn't incorporated in the staff report, for next month when they come back, it will be. So that will hopefully be further evaluated for you before you have to talk about it. But like Colette said, for every meeting, there's also a new info deadline. So for the April meeting, I believe that's the 16th, so that we can upload it the next Monday for you guys.
Well, the fact is, it's problematical for us when you have already done your staff comments and then they provide additional information. We're always grappling with this question of whether staff's had a reasonable opportunity and also whether we've had a reasonable opportunity to understand what they're doing and the like. So I would suggest then that as regards 504 East Jones Street, let's don't put it back on the agenda unless they've had opportunity to think about our questions about moving the structure and the like, so that you all have had a chance to comment on it, because that could be significant on that one. And then, of course, we don't have that problem on Hinsdale, but we'll have the issues of all this information and you commenting on all of it on 223 East Lenore, I think. So anyhow, we'll do what we need to do with. Janine, were you going to say something
I
else?
was going to add one more thing, just this is maybe more relating to my personal schedule, but I find it challenging to absorb the new material, and I certainly do it the best I can. I was familiar with all of that new material tonight, but I wonder if there isn't moving forward a way, and I know this is maybe subjective, to sort of say that's too much new material when somebody brings a giant packet of information 2 days before for us to absorb, and just maybe something to keep in the back of our minds.
Yeah. This is Tanya here. You can say so at the meeting and say, this is too much information, we're going to defer it, period. The fact that you get it ahead of time at all is a function of the remote meeting. In in-person meetings, you would be getting all of that at the meeting that day. So it doesn't feel like you're getting more time, but you actually are getting more time. But we do warn applicants that, if there's a lot of new information, that there is a high likelihood that you will defer. And speaking of deferrals, we did realize that case number COA 146-2020, you do need to vote to defer. We didn't manage to get it on the agenda like that, but that we do need a vote for that to happen.
What is that? What project is that?
Was that the fence in Glenwood, Brooklyn?
This is Erin. No, that's one of our deferred applications for 906 Dorothea Drive. It's in Boylan Heights. It's a fence and a rear patio and walkway, covered walkway.
Yeah, it shows on the agenda. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to defer 906 Dorothea Drive. John Reese makes that motion. Rashay Heights seconds the motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Raise your right hand. Okay, that carries unanimously, and we address that problem. But as a practical matter, then, Aaron, you're saying that on the Dorothea Drive one, they're still not ready to come back? There's been no discussion?
We have touched base with them periodically. We did in December. We did again prior to this month's deadline to see what the status is. And they're continuing to defer for now. We did let them know that at this meeting, we would need to make an action to keep it an active case. So we're just with the deferred applications that have already come for a meeting and just are consistently deferred. We do try to check in with them each month to see if they want to hop back in the round or not. And I'm not sure, Raz and Tanya, if there's anything more we can do with that other than just watch that 90 days and keep them active as we go.
So next month, if they don't come, if they're not back on, we will put it on the agenda as vote to defer. You can choose to continue to vote to defer. You can tell us now that you want it on the agenda anyway, and you're going to hear it. You don't often do that. What you have done in the past is to make a decision that an application be denied without prejudice, meaning that they can reapply for the same exact thing at a later date. And that gets it off of the deferral list.
Well, I'm inclined with some of these, I'd be inclined to pass that motion before my term ends.
Yeah, the two that we cannot do that on are the two that are choosing, that are deferred because they are electing not to consent to the remote electronic meeting. So those get to hang out until you're meeting in person again.
Tanya,
Right,
this
no,
is Erin.
I
I'll
get
just
that. They're not on this list though. They're not on this agenda at all.
The COA 11-2020 for 517 South Person is our only deferred application that is in that situation on this agenda.
Okay. All right, so that one we need to note is waiting for a live meeting. Okay, anything else that we ought to talk about, John Reese?
And this is in reference to the case we just heard about on North Street, is because I can see this one being a very complex discussion. And obviously, if the applicant provides new materials to us prior to the next deferment, which is next month, we're going to get that as an update, not as part of the packet for that staff's had an opportunity to kind of go over. And I think there's enough discussion that we've even had today on that specific project that might warrant them to go back to the drawing board on a few things that they know that we're going to have heartburn about. I'm wondering, is that an issue that is that a decision that has to be made by the applicant saying, we still want to be on the agenda next month? And,
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Well, you could still pass the word to them that it might be more efficient and effective for them to have done their thinking and skip April and put it on for May, so that they've done what they're thinking and staff's had a chance to comment. And so we're nodding to that, but if you want to pass that along to those applicants, we're not trying to drag them out, but on the other hand, we don't want to get it wrong either. All right, anything else? All right, thank y'all for your attention, and just make a note for the record, we got out of here before 7 o'clock, and so we'll look for that doodle poll, and maybe we'll have a live meeting and opportunity to go get a beer afterwards or something that we hadn't been able to do in a year. So, not that I'm desperate for a beer, but I wouldn't mind being in the same room with you all for a change. Anything else? Okay, folks, I declare this meeting adjourned. Y'all take care.
Thank you.
Make it good.
Good
Bye
night.
now.
Good night.